I tried to take her hand, and she tried to take mine. We could not do it. We couldn't touch. And when I looked around us, I saw that the other parents stood as we stood, holding papers with their children's details on them, undone by nerves, separate and alone, eyes fixed on the island across the water where something had happened, some dread thing for which we did not yet have a name. A larger boat this time, bullet-nosed, striped green and orange at the bow. It seemed to lift itself above the fjords that rounded the headland. Every face in the crowd watched. The boat turned a lazy arc, came to rest by the slipway. From the bow, 2 armed policemen surveyed the crowd, submachine guns readied. In the stern were 2 female officers, rifles half-shouldered as they scanned the shoreline. 2 more uniformed officers emerged from the wheelhouse, one tall, one small. Both men were blonde, both were unarmed. Something strange in the way they carried themselves, some unnatural swagger. They stood on the deck, looked out at the crowd, expressionless. Narrow white bands cuffed their wrists. 2 further female officers appeared close behind them, pistols drawn, and pointed at the men. I turned to Elsa, wanting to know if she felt my confusion, but she simply stood, staring. I looked from face to face in the crowd. In every face, I saw that same blank incomprehension that I saw in my wife. Police officers. I had not thought that the perpetrators would be police officers. I thought they'd be darker skinned, that they would be. I'd expected to see the words jihadism or Islamism in the news feeds, to hear those words whispered knowingly amongst other parents, spoken carefully into microphones by the reporters on their live links. Our values, their values. Allahu Akbar. To be plain, I had not expected these men to be white. In the bow, an officer lowered his submachine gun, dropped a gangplank into place. Metal slid on concrete. The officer beside him stepped ashore, his weapon at the ready. Grit crunched beneath his shoes. Both officers were on shore now, surveying the crowd, weapons readied. They glanced at each other, nodded. One of them turned, nodded towards the escort. The unarmed men, could they really be police, began to move towards the gangplank and onto the shore, each followed closely by a pistol-carrying officer who tracked their every move. The crowd split into 2, made room. These men, these suspects, they were not just white, they were archetypically, almost comically white. Their hair was bleached, their noses narrow, their eyes blue, their foreheads high. So close they were now, you could almost reach out. I caught the eye of the first, the taller of them. The man nodded. I felt myself beginning to nod back. I checked myself because surely no policeman could have done. What? What had these men done? Please, where is my daughter? None of us spoke. We parted quietly, made room for the police escort and for the 2 unarmed men who could not, surely they could not be policemen themselves. Their collars were undone, their boots were scuffed and muddied. Badges hung from their shoulders as if torn by briars. The shorter man spat something onto the slipway, a gobbet of chewing tobacco, grey-black and shiny. I caught the eye of another father, a man of my own age, saw in him my own confusion and rage. These men walk easily by us, arms cuffed, uniforms torn, when our children, what have they done with our children? Elsa was muttering something. I could feel her stiff staccato words, could hear the S sounds and the Ks and the Ts. I did not look at her. I could not look at her. I must not let her see my fear. The pistol-carrying officers led the men up the rise to 2 waiting police cars. The policewomen in the stern tracked the path of the men with their rifles, while the officers on the slipway scanned the crowd. I looked around. Still that dread silence.